and their need to get on with the job. And the responsibility of that now is going to fall on Queen Camilla's shoulders and also Prince William.
The moment didn't begin with an announcement. It didn't arrive with headlines. There were no palace trumpets, no official proclamation, no urgent broadcast interrupting regular programming. And yet, something shifted inside the British monarchy that morning, quietly, decisively, and in a way that would ripple through every corridor of royal power. Because when Prince William moved to secure control of the Queen's hidden estates, it wasn't just an administrative adjustment. It was a transfer of influence, a redistribution of authority, a signal that the future of the monarchy was no longer waiting politely in the distance. It had already stepped forward. The day appeared ceremonial on the surface. The arches of Westminster Abbey stood tall, as they had for centuries. Members of the royal family arrived in carefully timed procession. Cameras flashed. Crowds gathered. The familiar choreography of monarchy unfolded exactly as expected. But beneath the pageantry, a quiet confrontation had already been decided. Because hours earlier, legal mechanisms drafted long before this moment had been activated, documents reviewed, access permissions changed, estate oversight transferred, control consolidated, and those who understood royal structure knew immediately this was not routine. It was strategy. At the center of that strategy stood Prince William, calm, composed, and increasingly acting not as heir in waiting, but as operational guardian of royal continuity. His movements were measured, his interactions respectful, but the underlying reality was unmistakable. Responsibility had shifted. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla arrived with her usual composure, her expression carefully neutral, her posture poised. To the public, nothing appeared unusual. But inside palace circles, tension had already begun to circulate, because the estates in question were not symbolic holdings. They represented privacy, financial independence, and generational authority, properties linked directly to the legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. And now, those assets were firmly under William's stewardship. The reaction behind closed doors was immediate. For members of Camilla's extended family, expectations that influence might grow had collided with institutional reality. Planned quietly discussed over months, even years, suddenly lost foundation. No confrontation took place. No public dispute emerged. But access, the most valuable currency within royal structure, had quietly narrowed. As the ceremony began, observers noted the presence of Catherine, Princess of Wales. Her arrival, elegant and controlled, reflected more than style. To insiders, it symbolized continuity, stability, a bridge between tradition and modernization. Because while William represented structural authority, Catherine represented public reassurance. Together, they projected a monarchy already evolving. Inside Westminster Abbey, the atmosphere carried subtle weight. Conversations were polite but brief, glances measured, movements deliberate. It was not hostility, but recalibration, because once control of a state shifts, influence follows. And influence inside a monarchy is rarely loud. It moves through legal frameworks, advisory access, and strategic positioning. It is defined not by confrontation, but by structure. Behind the scenes, another figure played a crucial role, Princess Anne. Known for discipline and institutional loyalty, she worked quietly through archival records, ensuring legal clarity. Her approach was methodical, unemotional, and focused entirely on preservation. For Anne, these estates represented more than land. They represented continuity. Documents were examined, historical agreements reviewed, succession clauses confirmed, every step reinforcing the same outcome. The estates would remain under the authority of the direct heir, and that heir was Prince William. Meanwhile, discussions reportedly intensified within palace advisory circles. The legal framework behind the transfer had been laid carefully: trust structures, inheritance protections, and restrictions designed to prevent external influence. Once activated, those mechanisms left little room for negotiation. For Camilla's family, the shift felt abrupt. For the institution, it was procedural, because monarchy operates on precedent, not expectation. As the service progressed, observers noted the subtle interaction between William and King Charles III. Brief exchanges, coordinated movements, shared composure. This was not a power struggle. It was a managed transition. a monarchy operating in two timelines at once, one governed by the current sovereign, the other shaped by the future one. And in that overlap, authority becomes shared. The significance extended beyond property control. It represented a philosophical shift toward a streamlined monarchy. Fewer ambiguities, clearer lines of responsibility, greater alignment with public expectations. Supporters viewed it as modernization. Critics saw consolidation. But within palace logic, it was continuity planning, because institutions survive by anticipating change before it becomes necessary. As the ceremony concluded, the royal procession moved toward the grand doors. To most observers, unity defined the moment, but those aware of the internal developments understood its deeper meaning. The estates were no longer contested. They were secured, and with that security came clarity. Prince William was no longer simply preparing for kingship. He was exercising elements of it, quietly, deliberately, without declaration. The symbolism of Westminster Abbey added weight to the moment. Centuries of coronations, royal weddings, and state ceremonies had unfolded beneath its vaulted ceilings. Now, another transition, less visible, but equally significant, had taken place. No speeches announced it. No headlines fully captured it. But the reality remained. The future had stepped forward. As William walked beside his father, their synchronized movements reflected modern ceremony. They reflected continuity, a monarchy adjusting not abruptly, but intentionally. The estates themselves were never just property. They represented leverage, independence, legacy. And now, that legacy rested firmly with the heir. Behind palace doors, discussions about modernization continued. A streamlined monarchy, reduced institutional size, greater accountability, clearer roles. William's vision gained relevance in this environment, not as rebellion, but as adaptation, because institutions that resist adaptation risk losing relevance. As sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting patterns across ancient stone, the symbolism felt almost poetic. History laid upon history, and another chapter added. Quietly, without confrontation, without spectacle, but with consequences that would shape the monarchy's future. The camera of history rarely records moments like this loudly. It captures them in gestures, documents, and decisions made behind guarded doors. This was one of those moments. A shift completed without argument, a boundary reinforced without conflict, a future secured without proclamation. As the procession moved into daylight, tension eased, but the implications remained. Because power within monarchy does not erupt. It settles, and once settled, it defines the era that follows. Prince William had not seized authority dramatically. He had assumed responsibility, and in doing so, he signaled readiness. Readiness to protect legacy, readiness to shape structure, readiness to guide the institution forward. The stones of Westminster Abbey stood silent, witnesses to centuries of transitions, some loud, some quiet. This one belonged to the quiet kind. But quiet does not mean small, because in monarchy, the most powerful changes are rarely announced to the world. They are the ones the world only understands. Later, the quiet that followed did not signal resolution. It signaled adjustment, because once authority shifts, even subtly, the entire ecosystem surrounding it begins to recalibrate. Advisors reassess influence. Schedules are reconsidered. Access points narrow or expand depending on alignment. And within the palace, where hierarchy defines movement, those adjustments become immediately noticeable. For Prince William, the shift meant something deeper than administrative control. It placed him at the center of decisions that traditionally belonged solely to the reigning monarch. Not publicly, not ceremonially, but operationally. He began appearing in briefings once reserved for the sovereign. He reviewed engagements with increased strategic focus. He weighed not just symbolism, but consequence. This was not the impatience of an heir. It was the behavior of someone preparing for inevitability. And as that preparation intensified, the presence of Catherine, Princess of Wales, gained even more importance. Her role, often defined through public warmth and approachability, now carried institutional weight. Where William projected authority, he projected continuity. Together, they formed a balance the monarchy increasingly relied upon. Her appearances were carefully timed. Her engagements carried measured messaging. Her visibility reassured a public sensitive to change, because modernization can unsettle unless it is accompanied by familiarity. Inside palace corridors, discussions about restructuring grew more practical. The concept of a slimmed-down monarchy moved from theory to planning. Fewer working royals, clearer duties, reduced financial opacity, increased accountability. These were not radical ideas, but implementing them required influence. And influence now rested more firmly with William. Support for this direction quietly built among senior advisors. The institution had faced increasing scrutiny, questions about cost, relevance, and transparency. Streamlining offered both survival and legitimacy. It signaled responsiveness without dismantling tradition. Yet every reform carries resistance. Some viewed consolidation of authority as erosion of heritage. Others worried that reducing roles would diminish the monarchy's reach. The balance between modernization and continuity became delicate, and William found himself navigating that line. Meanwhile, King Charles III remained a symbolic anchor. His experience, diplomacy, and commitment to tradition provided stability. But the operational dynamic had changed. Decisions were increasingly shaped through consultation rather than hierarchy. This created a monarchy functioning in dual mode. One grounded in tradition, one oriented toward evolution. The tension between them was subtle but constant. Behind the scenes, Princess continued her steady involvement. Her reputation for discipline and loyalty positioned her as a stabilizing force. She ensured procedural integrity while allowing change to unfold gradually. Her influence was quiet, but deeply respected. And then there was the broader context. Public perception. In an era of instant analysis and relentless scrutiny, every royal move carried amplified meaning. Absences sparked speculation. Appearances generated interpretation. Silence became commentary. The monarchy, once shielded by distance, now operated under continuous observation. This made internal clarity essential. William understood that ambiguity breeds doubt. Clear roles, defined responsibilities, and controlled transparency would reduce speculation. His approach reflected long-term thinking, not dramatic shifts, but incremental restructuring. The estates secured earlier became part of that strategy. They provided independence, financial stability, operational flexibility, resources that allowed the heir to shape initiatives without over-reliance on existing structures. In monarchy, resources equal influence, and influence shapes the future. As weeks passed, subtle changes emerged. Engagements increasingly featured William in leading roles. Policy-related conversations included his perspective. International interactions highlighted his diplomatic presence. None of it was sudden, but all of it was cumulative. Observers began noting the pattern. Not a takeover, but a transition in motion. The monarchy appeared less static, more adaptive. Younger leadership combined with experienced oversight. The duality created resilience. Yet it also created anticipation, because history shows that shared authority rarely remains shared indefinitely. At some point, continuity requires consolidation. The institution must resolve its dual timeline into a single direction. That moment had not yet arrived, but the groundwork was unmistakable. William was not waiting for change. He was preparing for it, and preparation, within monarchy, is itself a form of power. As the palace settled into this new rhythm, the broader narrative became clearer. The British monarchy was not undergoing a visible revolution. It was evolving quietly, carefully, and deliberately, guided by those already thinking beyond the present. The estates secured earlier were only one step. The restructuring discussions another. The operational involvement yet another. Together, they formed a trajectory. Forward, always forward, toward a monarchy shaped not only by inheritance, but by intention. And as evening fell over Buckingham Palace, its lights glowing softly against the London skyline, the symbolism felt almost timeless. The building stood unchanged, yet the forces within it were shifting. History rarely announces its turning points loudly. Sometimes, it whispers through decisions, gestures, and responsibilities assumed without fanfare. Prince William had stepped into that space. Not as a challenger, not as a disruptor, but as a guardian of continuity, redefining continuity itself. And in the quiet rooms where strategy replaces ceremony, the future of the monarchy continued to take shape. Carefully, deliberately, Inevitably, the transformation did not unfold in a single decisive moment. It moved in layers, quiet, calculated, almost imperceptible unless one knew where to look. Within the walls of Buckingham Palace, meetings began to carry a different tone. Agendas expanded. Strategic discussions lasted longer. The emphasis slowly shifted from ceremonial continuity to operational sustainability. Prince William's presence in those rooms was no longer symbolic. It was essential. He listened more than he spoke, but when he did contribute, the focus was clear: relevance, efficiency, and public trust. These were not abstract ideals. They were survival principles for a modern monarchy navigating a rapidly changing world. Because the institution understood something fundamental, public perception now moved faster than tradition. The monarchy could no longer rely solely on history to justify its role. It needed to demonstrate purpose, and William's approach reflected that urgency. He emphasized clarity of responsibility. Each working royal assigned defined roles. Overlapping duties reduced. Public engagements aligned with measurable impact. These ideas were pragmatic, but also transformative. Meanwhile, King Charles III continued to project stability. His decades of experience provided a grounding presence, reassuring both advisors and the public. Yet even as he fulfilled ceremonial obligations, the operational momentum quietly shifted toward his heir. It was not a replacement. It was preparation. The monarchy now functioned like a relay. The baton not yet passed, but already in shared grip. Catherine, Princess of Wales, remained central to this balance. Her engagements emphasized community, family, and continuity. Where structural change risked appearing cold, her presence softened perception. She embodied familiarity in an era of adjustment. Together, William and Catherine projected a monarchy that felt both modern and reassuring, evolving without abandoning its emotional connection to the public. But beyond public appearances, the structural recalibration deepened. Advisors began drafting long-term frameworks for a streamlined royal household, financial transparency measures, reduced operational footprint, clearer succession planning. These weren't immediate changes. They were blueprints for the future. As evening briefings concluded and corridors grew quiet, the sense of transition lingered. Staff recognized a shift. Advisors adjusted expectations. Even ceremonial planning incorporated future-oriented thinking. Prince William was no longer preparing in theory. He was shaping practice, and that shaping extended beyond policy. It influenced tone. Communication became more measured. Public statements emphasized service and accountability. The monarchy's narrative slowly aligned with contemporary values. The transformation remained subtle, but undeniable, because history often moves not through sudden upheaval, but through accumulation. Small decisions laid over time until the overall structure changes. This was one of those periods. A monarchy recalibrating itself from within, guided by experience at the top and vision just beneath it. As night settled over London, the lights of Buckingham Palace glowed against the skyline. From the outside, nothing appeared different. The same facade, the same guards, the same sense of permanence. But inside, the future was being quietly negotiated. Responsibilities shared, structures refined, expectations redefined. Prince William stood at the center of that negotiation, not demanding authority, but gradually embodying it. And as the institution adjusted around him, one truth became increasingly clear. The monarchy was not waiting for change. It was already becoming it. Beyond the immediate adjustments, a broader realization began to take hold inside Buckingham Palace. The monarchy was no longer operating in a world defined solely by deference. Public engagement had changed. Expectations had shifted, and authority now required explanation as much as tradition. Prince William understood this dynamic deeply. His approach emphasized not only preserving royal relevance, but actively demonstrating value. Engagements became more purposeful. Causes aligned with long-term societal concerns. Appearances were fewer, but more focused, designed to show impact rather than ceremony. This recalibration influenced internal planning. Advisors began mapping responsibilities based on expertise rather than seniority. Working royals were assigned initiatives that matched their strengths. The aim was efficiency, a monarchy that functioned with clarity instead of overlap. Meanwhile, King Charles III continued fulfilling his constitutional role with measured dignity. His experience in diplomacy and tradition remained invaluable. But increasingly, William's involvement ensured that strategic planning extended beyond the present reign. It created continuity that felt intentional, not reactive. Catherine, Princess of Wales, played a parallel role in shaping perception. Her engagements emphasized empathy, family, and social well-being. These themes resonated strongly with the public and complemented William's structural focus. Together, they projected a monarchy grounded in both compassion and practicality. Behind the scenes, Princess maintained her reputation as a steady institutional force. Her familiarity with royal protocol and administrative detail ensured that modernization unfolded within constitutional boundaries. She acted as both guardian of tradition and quiet supporter of evolution. The discussions about a streamlined monarchy gained further momentum. Reducing operational complexity meant difficult decisions. Some roles would diminish, others would expand. But the underlying objective remained clear: sustainability, because relevance requires adaptability. Financial transparency became another focal point. The monarchy recognized growing public interest in accountability. By clarifying funding structures and operational costs, the institution aimed to reinforce trust. These initiatives aligned closely with William's long-term vision. Internationally, William's presence began carrying greater diplomatic weight. His visits emphasized collaboration on global issues such as climate, mental health, and innovation. These engagements showcase a monarchy engaged with contemporary challenges, not confined to ceremonial tradition. Observers noticed a subtle shift. Media coverage increasingly framed William as a leader in practice, not just in succession. This narrative strengthened the perception of continuity. The monarchy appeared prepared for the future, not uncertain about it. Inside Buckingham Palace, staff routines evolved accordingly. Strategic briefings included forward-looking scenarios. Communications teams crafted messaging that balanced heritage with modernization. Planning extended years ahead, reflecting confidence in the trajectory. The estate secured earlier played a supportive role in this transformation. They provided financial independence and operational flexibility. These resources enabled initiatives aligned with modernization without placing strain on existing budgets. Influence, in monarchy, often flows through such practical mechanisms, and William used them carefully. No abrupt changes, no public declarations, only steady progress. As weeks turned into months, the dual leadership dynamic matured. King Charles remained a constitutional figurehead. William increasingly acted as operational strategist. This shared approach created resilience during a period of adjustment. The monarchy functioned with two perspectives: experience and anticipation. Together, they reduce uncertainty. Decisions considered both tradition and evolving expectations. The public response reflected cautious optimism. Polls indicated continued support, particularly when modernization appeared balanced with continuity. The institution seemed aware of this balance and maintained it deliberately. Even ceremonial events carried subtle messaging. Joint appearances emphasized unity. Shared responsibilities demonstrated cooperation. The monarchy presented itself as cohesive despite internal evolution. And through it all, Prince William's role grew steadily. Not dramatically, but unmistakably. He reviewed policy proposals. He shaped long-term strategy. He guided institutional tone. Each step reinforced the same trajectory. Forward, always forward. As dusk settled again over Buckingham Palace, its silhouette unchanged against the London skyline, the symbolism remained powerful. The monarchy's exterior suggested permanence. But inside, transformation continued quietly. History rarely announces such transitions. They unfold in decisions, conversations, and responsibilities assumed over time. Prince William stood at the center of this gradual evolution, not challenging tradition, but redefining it. And as the institution adjusted around him, the direction became increasingly clear. The future of the monarchy was not approaching. It was already being built.